Hi, I'm Christian Brindle, and welcome to the Everything Medicare Podcast. What's up, Everything Medicare Podcast Nation? This is Christian Brindle. Wherever you are and however you might be listening, thank you so much for joining me today, where every single week we discuss your Medicare, your Medicaid, your Social Security, and everything that has to do with that golden age called retirement. I have an awesome guest with me here today. I have Joe Tretola with Nation Care Insurance Services. Joe, thank you so much for taking the time.
You're welcome, Christian, and that was a very energetic opening, and I wish I had the opportunity to work with lots of people like you that are very energetic. So that it really speaks a lot of volume.
Oh, well, thank you. I try. It's always a challenge because we're trying to make one of the most boring subjects probably there is to talk about interesting, and it's never.
Are you saying Medicare is as exciting as watching paint dry?
More or less. Well, Joe, you own Nation Care Insurance Services, right? Or you're a partner? Want to make sure.
It's actually my wife is the main owner.
Okay.
We had structured it that way because I have a local agency in Florida. So when we decided to expand on a nation scale, we decided the way to do it was to start up a brand new agency. So she is, in fact, the owner. She's the agency principal. She does a lot of behind the scenes work. A lot of background stuff, a lot of agency processing and so forth. And I'm more on the sales and the recruiting and the training side of the equation. So we work together as a team. It's good. Some days, most days it's really good. Other days we look at each other. But yeah, it's definitely been an interesting journey.
Well, awesome. Well, Nation Care Insurance Services is in 30 states. We'll talk about that a little bit more later, but you're someone that's worked with a ton of people on Medicare over the years. You've probably seen every single situation there is to see. You've worked with all different kinds of agents. And so I thought that we could kind of tackle this thing from a unique perspective, from, a perspective that people can look at as far as what they should look for in a good agent, what they should look for in a policy. And I just kind of thought, having you on would be a great opportunity to kind of talk about some things we can't talk about with everybody. So again, I really appreciate you taking the time. Talk about your journey and your story first to kind of introduce the audience to you a little bit. How did you get into the business? How did you get into the industry? To talk about your history.
I got into Medicare by accident. My original profession was a financial planner, and I worked with American Express in New York. When American Express owned Ameriprise. Ameriprise is a spinoff of American Express. A lot of people don't know that. And I was a financial planner with them for 10 years. And my early 30s, I moved down to Florida, kind of reinvented myself, got right back into my profession, but as an independent. And when you're living in South Florida, you come across a large segment of people that are retired or looking to retire. Mm-hmm. So the questions of Medicare would come up, and I didn't really know how to answer because it was a part of our industry I never paid any attention to whatsoever. So just by sheer default and demand of trying to service this clientele, I had to go and learn Medicare. And I'll never forget, it was Thanksgiving weekend, the year 2010. I locked myself in a room for a couple days. I did certifications at the time, AHIP and whatnot. Mm-hmm. I came out of those 4 days. I couldn't remember a single thing of what I learned. It was completely foreign to me. And I relied very heavily on the groups that I was working with at the time, the uplines, to kind of help me guide through. And, as time would go on, I would learn a little bit more, learn a little bit more. And it just kind of fell that way. And I would say right around 2015, I just decided that the whole financial planning business was a thing of my past. And I didn't have any clients that really wanted to lose money. So then I just transitioned wholly into, more of a fixed insurance role. And Medicare has always just been a big present part of that.
Well,
And that's how it came about. Yeah, it was by accident. In fact, we joke around. My brother started working with me, and we literally worked in a little 100 square foot office.
wow.
And we would joke because the way we sat, our knees would touch underneath the desk with the two computers. And, that's kind of how the whole thing blossomed. And we've had our shares of ups and downs. We've gone through our roller coasters, but we definitely feel very happy about where we are right now.
Well, I can definitely sympathize with, that kind of beginning. I started working with my dad when I was 20, I think.
Mm-hmm.
My dad had been in the Medicare business for 30 years, built a very successful agency locally here in Utah. And one of my really good friends came into the business with me, and the only room he had for us at the time was just this little office in the back. No windows, no nothing, 2 desks back to back. And we shared that office for probably our first year, if not year and a half. It was like, they called it the bad agent room because it had no windows.
Yeah, I think our office was an internal office. It didn't have windows either.
Oh, yeah. Well, Joe, this is something I was really interested to kind of talk with you about. You've worked with a ton of agents over the years. You guys, have consulted for agencies, just kind of seen a lot from the agent side of things. For people out there that might be listening that are, maybe on Medicare, or maybe they're about to get onto Medicare, when they're in a situation where, they're getting it from all angles from the agent side of things, and they're just not sure which agent they should pick or what they should be looking for in an agent. What are some characteristics that you feel that you've seen over the years that a good agent shows that a person on Medicare should look for when they're picking an agent?
Well, first and foremost, their knowledge of the various moving parts of Medicare. Our industry is kind of interesting in a sense, and that is when people are starting to turn age 65. And I don't know if your viewership has that segment on it, but as people are starting to turn age 65, there's a lot of aggressive marketing that happens. Their phone starts to ring, their mailbox starts to get filled. Clients report to us that agents, show up at their door and ring their bell and so forth. And, they start to get marketed to from all various different points. Their Facebook thing starts to fill up with ads. And one of the things that we are aware of out there is there's a segment of the agents that are marketing to this group that, for whatever reason or another, they don't get involved on the prescription drug analysis, partly because it has a lot to do with the marketing rules and laws and things that are behind that. But they're basically leaving the client kind of held out there to dry and fend for themselves as they get closer to their 65th birthday, because they have not taken the time to learn or understand, and let alone even properly advise someone's prescription drugs. And what we've learned is that in the market itself, and this is more speaking to the 65 plus community, is we've learned that that's probably one of the biggest expenses that somebody has is their medications. It's not difficult to be 70 years old, be put on a medicine for a TV commercial that you see on TV. You go to fill it at the pharmacy and it's $500. You go to call your agent for help, and they don't answer the phone. They're not there anymore. They don't know how to properly advise you, and it becomes a bit of a challenge. So I think that if you're a client and you're looking to do business with an agent, one of the questions you have to ask them is how versed are they and how well do they understand prescription drug coverage? It's very, very important. The second thing I think that's important when you're dealing with an agent, and this is, we do a lot of business over the phone, so we're always addressing the local part of the conversation. A lot of times a client will communicate to us that they want to work with somebody local, and I certainly understand that, and I absolutely appreciate that, but there's a certain nostalgia that comes into play when you're dealing with somebody local. But what clients don't really understand is it's actually a negative consequence to work with somebody that's traveling from door to door in their car. And that is half their day or 3/4 of their day, they're literally spent going from house to house. So when a situation arises, if they're an independent single agency office and that emergency arises and that person is traveling from home to home, they can't get to that problem as quickly as somebody like you or I could, that are literally sitting in front of our computer all day long, ready to answer the phone at a moment's notice, ready to respond to our Apple Watches, ready to respond to our iPhones. So there's a big nostalgia in the marketplace where the client is just so hung up on wanting to do business with somebody that's in their local town. But the fact of the matter is that could have a negative consequence long term because there's not an efficiency model built around that. Now, I'm not saying that that agent can't survive. Absolutely they can. But I feel that a client is more apt to work with somebody that is, remote, because they have access to the technology and they can resolve the matter very quickly. Second point to that would be how we all solve our problems. We all know that as soon as we hang the phone up with the client with the problem, the very next thing we're going to do is pick up the phone to solve it. And that's whether we're sitting 1,000 miles away from them or whether we're sitting 5 feet away from them at their kitchen table. We're going to solve the problem identically the same way. We're going to hear what it is. We're going to try to resolve it the best way we can. And if not, we're going to pick the phone up and call the insurance company to fix the problem. So it really shouldn't matter really where we sit, because we're all going to solve the problem the same way. It's just a matter of who's going to be able to resolve it in a most efficient and expedited way. And the remote agent will always have that edge versus a face-to-face field agent. So location is a big deal. Location is a major deal. And then the final part is what's in that agent's tool bag. So, you have the 3 different models out there: the captive, the career, and the independent. The captive model, although it's not a negative model, I come from a captive environment where we had one life insurance company, we had one mutual fund company. It just was the way of the world. But nowadays, the agent that sells the one single product is never going to tell you what's going on with the other product. They're never going to tell you if your doctor leaves the network. They're never going to tell you what your alternative option is going to be, because they can't. It's just not in their arsenal. So I feel that the client will be better served by working with the career agent or the independent agent, because at the very least, they'll at least have some options, assuming their current option doesn't pan out for them in the years to come. So those would be the 3 things I would look for. I would look for medication experience. That's first and foremost. Second, I would look for would be location. And then thirdly, I would look for is their expansion of products and knowledge within their arsenal.
I agree with all of that a lot. I mean, I think that, people get so hung up on, well, I like to know you're around the block if I ever would need you. And then what it turns out to be is they never actually need to go to that person's physical office. Every time they have an issue, it's solved by phone, by telephone. So I agree with you completely on that. And I think, I think more and more people are starting to kind of realize that that's not as important as they thought it was maybe 15 years ago, or 20 or something like that. Joe, let's transition into this about the coverage side of things for people on Medicare. I'm sure that your guys' organization has seen a number of people that have come to you that maybe weren't covered properly right from the get-go when they aged in, when they turned 65. Is there something in particular that comes to mind on an area that people seem to leave themselves most exposed?
Absolutely, and we see it on the managed care side of the equation. On the managed care side, when people select the all-in-one HMOs and PPOs, which are wonderful plans, they serve a purpose, there's a community for them, they do wonders. But we see exposure in those plans, primarily in the hospitalization category and the cancer chemotherapy category. And what we're seeing now, or what we're finding is, as time goes on, those exposure holes are becoming more and more. The carriers are opening up the cost sharing a little bit more. because it helps out with the actuarial plan and it keeps the premiums really low, or it continues to keep the premium at zero if you're in a market where you have a zero premium plan. So what we've noticed in the last maybe 2 years is the demand for ancillary products have been very great and vast for the clients, because they're afraid, God forbid, if something were to happen to them and they were, admitted to the hospital, or if they were diagnosed with cancer, they don't want to be stuck with, a potentially 2 or 3, or in some cases a $7,000 bill. But more importantly, they don't have those kinds of funds. So we've seen a huge surge in ancillary products, and the market has responded as well. Some insurance companies have responded by reducing and lowering their ancillary product premiums. I know Mutual of Omaha was one that went around the country and cut their cancer insurance premiums by 20%, making them ultra competitive and easily affordable by most. So I've noticed those two areas. On the final expense, on the Medicare supplement side, what I have seen over the past year is I have seen a lot of agents using the fear tactic of the Plan F going away as a reason to buy the Plan F, right? I've seen that. And at least I haven't seen this happen. Maybe you have. But when you look at the rate increase histories of most insurance companies of Plan Fs versus Plan Gs, I have almost always seen the rate increase history greater on an F plan than with a G plan in the same insurance company. Right. And you may see a G rate go up 5% historically, but you see the F rate going up 8% historically. So I had questioned a lot of the ethics last year, especially of the marketing, of why agents would use that as a scare tactic in order to entice their clients to pick out a certain type of plan when the data suggested otherwise. Yes, we all knew the Plan F was going away. Everybody knew this. We knew for years. But we also had the data that suggested that even though this plan was being discontinued, the client wasn't in a beneficial situation to maintain it. So that was the other part of it. And I think that what you're going to see in the next coming years is a lot of clients that were kind of led down that path are going to start to get these excessive rate increases, and they're going to scratch their head and say, you know what, maybe I need to shop this out. And you're going to see kind of a surge of clients, realigning themselves, if they can medically, on the G plan, or even more economically, the N plan. So I think that you'll see in the coming years, more so probably more next year than anything, because that's when they get all their rate increases. So those are the two things that I see in the marketplace. And then the third thing that we noticed is that the clients are now asking more and more about long-term care and home health care. It's more of a thing now, because what's interesting about the baby boomers right now is they're referring the baby boomers as the sandwich generation. And that's where they're in the middle. They're often taking care of a parent, an aging elderly parent, and they still have children, younger children, that still require some attention, whether they're living at home, whether they need some help getting their first house. Maybe the child just had a child of their own. They need some financial assistance and so forth. But they find themselves still taking care of their children, and they find themselves now taking care of their parents, or their one parent, and they're seeing what it's costing. Like they're visually seeing what it's like. Yeah. It's just out of this world. It's just insane. So now they're coming around and they're asking questions like, how much does long-term care cost? Can I get it? What about if I want to be taking care of the home? What if I can't afford a long-term care policy? What else can I do? Is there any asset protection? And we're getting a lot of those conversations. And I can tell you, we didn't have a lot of them a few years ago. So it's definitely a lot more awareness. Yeah,
I mean, we've seen a very, very similar kind of trend the last year and a half or so with us as well. I mean, and there's always agents out there that are going to tell people that are even on Plan F, you're going to lose the Plan F starting in 2020 and those kind of things. We saw a lot of that. We saw, but we definitely did see a lot of people calling us that were, on Plan Gs or Plan Ns or things like that, that were afraid they might not be able to get the F. And what I would always tell them is, you'll still be able to get the F because you're eligible for Medicare before the 2020 deadline. But even if, let's say, for example, you couldn't get it, I wouldn't recommend it even if that was the truth, because the long-term stability of the rates, and I agree with you completely. The rate increases are what people don't take into consideration on the long-term aspect of it.
We don't work in every market, so I can't speak,
Sure.
as a blanket thing.
Yeah.
And we don't work with every insurance company, so I can't speak with what one insurance company does that we don't subscribe to. But I have yet to see a scenario where the rate increases for the F historically were at a lower percentage than the G. It was always the other way around.
Right.
So I would scratch my head and say, like, how could we, how can an agent, not so much look the client in the eye, but when you're telling the client, hey, listen, I'm gonna give you unbiased advice, and my advice is going to be objective, and it's going to be what I believe is going to be in your best interest, not mine. And then you turn around and say, buy the F because it's going away. When you know in the back of your mind, right? When you know in the back of your mind, like, it costs more, it's going to go up more. More sick people are on it, and so forth. It just, I don't know, it just never sit well with me. But who knows what's going to happen in a few years? Like, this is all speculation.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
For all we know, the G could be the new F. No one knows.
Yeah.
I'm not an actuarial, so I wouldn't know.
Right. And I think the next couple of years will be very telling. Is kind of what direction we go in, and kind of what direction the industry goes in. I think that speaking about agents again, let's transition back into an agent question. Having a good agent opposed to a bad agent for someone on Medicare, how much different can a good agent make in someone's life?
Oh, it can make the world a difference. It can save the client a tremendous amount of money, years and years and years and years. There's the emotional feeling of knowing that area of your life is being taken care of because you have determined that you've selected the right professional. So you can kind of mentally close that chapter down, knowing that it's being handled well, in the same fashion that if you feel you have a good accountant and you know that you're not going to be overpaying on your income taxes, you can kind of walk that path of confidence. And then, whether or not that agent is a nurturing based agent. And, if you feel that that person has done wonders for you, you're going to want to go out and refer him or her to other people that are in similar situations like yourself. That's a huge, huge benefit. I think that clients that are led down the path by a bad agent, and I like to believe, this is what I like to believe. Let me put this asterisk out there. I don't truly believe in this world that there's a whole lot of people that wake up in the morning in our industry and say, who today am I going to screw over? Like, I don't believe that happens. I purposely don't believe that because I don't want to think like that. I like the way my mind is a very positive, optimistic way of thinking. But I do firmly believe that agents do wake up in the morning and there's a level of incompetency that they have, whether they recognize it or they don't recognize it, or maybe they're just not made any aware of that incompetency. And then they go out and they, bring clients in, and just because of their lack of training, their lack of understanding, and their lack of knowledge of the industry, they could potentially put the client in a worse situation than they're in currently. That I do believe happens. And it's really hard to detect that, really, especially if you have somebody that's, very friendly and kind and courteous. But, the main thing is going to be the drugs. If that person can't help you with prescription drug plans, that's usually a sign. Because it really doesn't take a whole lot of time and effort to certify. It's a couple of day commitment to your career and a couple of more hours with the carriers to be, given the privilege to represent them for their prescription drug plans. And then the technology exists where you can do the analytics. It's all there available to us. So for an agent not to take the time to do that, to me, that would say that they're probably not the one that I would want to handle all my affairs with.
Yeah.
If that makes any sense.
No, I think I couldn't put that better myself. I think that's a very, very good way to look at it. And, we don't want to think that there's a whole bunch of people running around there that, they're twiddling their mustache, if you will, and everything,
Right.
up to something, I don't want to believe that myself. And, I don't think there's a whole lot of those out there. I think there are some, but I think, I agree with you completely. I think a majority of it is just lack of education, with the turnover rate, I think, having a lot to do with it in the industry.
Right. And what we tell clients usually is that our agency doesn't contract with every prescription drug plan. It's impossible to do that. We have most of the major ones, but certainly not every single one. But we let them know that if you're on, particular set of drugs, primarily the name brands, and one of the other guys tends to be more beneficial to you, we're going to be the ones to tell you. We're going to grab your hand. We're going to walk you across the street. We're going to introduce you to the other guy, the other insurance company, and we're going to help you to the best of our ability getting you enrolled with them, because they're the ones that are going to give you the better deal. And we're going to be the ones to tell you that. But we'll act as the liaison. Should any type of issues arise, you can come to us as your advocate, and we'll be able to help mediate the situation. We may not be able to physically do the labor to solve it, but we will absolutely be able to mediate the situation. And it's rare that a situation arises where the client's drugs are better suited in a different plan. We usually see it with like the Humira patients and whatnot.
Right.
Plan A is better than plan B. But so far that logic has worked out well, because that allows, I could speak for myself, but that allows me to lay my head on my pillow at the end of the night, knowing that in my heart of hearts, I have acted to the best of my ability in the best interest of that client, even if that action did not result in a dollar of revenue for me or my or a company. So that's how my mind works, and it's just a great way to think. And a client should be able to see that. The other thing I'll put out there too that we do very well is we let the client know how we're compensated. And I think it's really important for our audience, our clientele, to know exactly how we're compensated. We are paid every single month they make a premium payment or they remain in a particular plan. Every single month, if they're in that plan or they make that premium payment, we get some portion of that, some more than others, but we get some portion of that. And it's typically for the life of the policy, or at least a minimum of 10 years. Like, it's a long time we get paid. So we try to communicate to the client right off the bat, this is how we get paid, this is how we get compensated, whether you choose plan A or plan B or C or D, whichever one you choose it from, they will compensate us for the most part all the same way. So whether we pick one or the other is irrelevant. We just want you to do the business with us, because that's how we get paid. And we do that. There's an incentive for working because we have to get it right. And if we don't get it right the first time, we got to be there to help it get it right the second time. And if we're not there to help you, if we don't get it right the first time, the business is going else. So there's a financial incentive for us to stay around year after year after year to make sure you remain happy. And one thing we learned, Christian, is that, and you could speak to this as well, is that happy people keep their policies.
Yes.
Upset people don't, So as long as we keep the clients happy, as long as we can respond to their requests, as long as we can help them shop for coverage, if things don't go as planned, they will continuously be happy and they'll keep the business with us. And so far that logic has worked. That model has worked.
I think it's a model that a lot of agents should carry. I remember when I got started in the business, my dad would always tell me that we'd rather have one happy client than 50 unhappy clients, because the 50 unhappy clients won't be here in a year, whereas the one happy client will be here in a year. And that's kind of that's really stuck with me, as I've kind of gone throughout my career. And I think it's really important for clients to pick an agency that's going to, provide that service that you talk about, that's going to be there for them, that's going to be willing to kind of lend a hand, and that's going to be available with them every step of the way. I agree completely.
Absolutely. I think transparency is key.
Yes.
I never understood why agents and advisors were always nervous to share with clients like how they're compensated.
Yeah. Yeah. I
You
mean, we do it
know,
all the time.
oh, it's I was trained that way when I first started in finance. Our presentation was a face-to-face presentation, but a portion of it, about 5 minutes, went over exactly how we're compensated. Like,
Hmm.
this is how we get paid. Are you comfortable with our fee structure? Are you comfortable with how we're getting paid? Like, complete transparency.
Yeah. No surprises. That's the way we like it.
Exactly, exactly. Should never be afraid to tell someone how you're paid.
Agreed. Agreed. Joe, let me shift gears over to this. And this is
Hmm.
a question I've asked every single person that's come on the podcast, and we've got a multitude of different answers for a multitude of different reasons. And I know it's not an easy question to answer, so it's kind of a question that kind of puts you on the hot seat a little bit. But um, and obviously no situation is the same. Everybody has different needs and preferences and so on and so forth. But if you had to lean more towards either Medicare Advantage on one side or Medicare Supplement on the other side as a whole, which do you typically lean towards and why? Of course, there's no right answer for everybody, so take it with a grain of salt. But it's a question that I think is kind of a fun question. We've asked everybody that's come on.
It's a simple answer. It all boils down to money. If
Mm-hmm.
you're in a position in your life where you can honestly afford approximately $150 a month additional above what Medicare will take out of your check, so let's call it $300 total.
Mm-hmm.
If you can truly afford $300 and your quality of life is not impacted, you're not eating, tuna fish every single day.
Yeah,
You're not
yeah,
wondering whether or not you can, take your grandkids out for lunch. Like, you can live your life to the best of your ability because that $300 is not weighing your life down. Then you will be far more served on the Medicare supplement policy long term, because it's an all access pass to all 50 US states, to every single provider or facility that takes original Medicare. It's just,
mm-hmm.
a membership card for anywhere, anytime, pretty much anything, without any hesitation or hassle. And you also have to be in a position where you can absorb those rate increases as time goes on. If you're starting at $110 on a Medicare supplement plan today, a decade from now, you're going to be double. I mean, that's just, you have to
Right.
be prepared for that. It's just going to be 2x, 2.5x. If you are the kind of individual that truly feels that $100 to $150 a month might be a bit of a struggle, you don't have a very long history of health concerns, then you would be better served on a managed care plan, either an HMO or a PPO. So to me, it really
Yeah,
falls down to money. It's all about money.
yeah. I think that's very, very true. And so, simply put, that I think people overcomplicate that question, and it
Hmm.
doesn't need to be such a complicated answer. I think that really does very well articulate kind of what it comes down to.
It's a money thing, because you could always go from a Medicare supplement policy over to a Medicare Advantage plan.
Right,
It's not, you can't go the other way around.
right, right.
You start off in a Medicare Advantage plan and you get dealt a bad hand of health, and now you're seeing a dozen specialists and, testing and surgeries. You're there. That's the
Right.
spot that you have to stay in. If you go Medicare supplement and something happens and you suffer, well, there's two kinds of health problems. There's a health event, and then there's a chronic. A lot of people may only suffer a health event. So a health event, the best one we can say, is a heart attack.
Hmm.
So you could be in a supplement plan, you have a health event, that health event wakes you up, and all of a sudden you decide that day you're going to change your lifestyle. You're not smoking anymore, you're eating healthy, you lose your weight, you're exercising, and you nurse yourself back to health. You could be better served on a Medicare Advantage plan because you won't have those premiums anymore. Whereas if you're chronic and you're dealing and you're managing ongoing conditions, the co-payments that you pay in a Medicare Advantage plan can add up very quickly.
Certainly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Year after year after year, you may be better served on the Medicare supplement side. But I as an individual, depending on the person's resources, I don't want to say I nudge them, but I'll always paint the picture of the Medicare supplement.
The
If they're in a
important.
position where they can, the importance of doing that. But in the end, it's up to them to decide.
Yeah. Well, I love it. I love it. I think that's really good. And for what it's worth, I think every single person that's come on and done an interview and had a conversation with me, when I've asked that question, everybody's more leaned towards Medicare supplement, except for one person.
Mm-hmm.
We've interviewed quite a few people now.
Right.
So,
Okay.
you're not alone. And then I did an episode where I asked myself the question, and I did a whole episode where I kind of explained my thoughts on it. And I went Medicare supplement too. I said if all things were equal, if the money situation wasn't an issue, Medicare supplement's usually going to be the best way to go. But of course you're right. It's all based on money. And I love that answer. I think it's really good.
Unless you're living in a market like Miami or Los Angeles or Las Vegas or New York City. If you're in a highly dense market where your maximum out of pocket on a Medicare Advantage plan is $999.
Yeah, like practically nothing.
Yeah, you'd be foolish to buy a $300 a month Medicare supplement policy.
Right.
At that point, the money out will flip around where the Medicare Advantage plan is way more economically sensible.
Definitely. Yeah. Joe, I got one last question for you, and then we wrap this up. And this is a tough one to answer, so take it with a grain of salt. Obviously, nobody has a crystal ball. Nobody knows exactly what's going to happen. But if you had to guess, from your experience, about a decade in the industry, where would you say Medicare is going in the next 10 years as we enter into this new decade in the 2020s? Where do you see it going? There's a lot of talks in politics. I don't want to get political about it or anything, but if you had to take a guess, where do you see Medicare going?
I think the Medicare system is going to be identically the same. It's going to be the same path that we've seen in the last 10 years. And I think you're going to see more and more people as they're aging in. You're going to see more of a market share in the managed care platform. There's just too much money at stake for that not to grow, regardless of who's in office. It's, at the end of the day, both bipartisan agree that if we can save money to the system, it's better. But I think what you'll see on the beneficiary side is you'll see a little bit more cost sharing come their way, but nothing crazy. $10 a year for their Part B premium. $15 a year for their Part B deductible going up, $10 more on the Part A deductible. There'll be small increment increases because it's based upon, number of people in the plan and bills being paid out. But I definitely see the trend, as the trend has been going the last 10 years, I definitely see the trend of more of a market share for managed care. And I'm noticing that Medicare itself is promoting it. Not so much in like an advertising, commercial type of way, but it's better for them if they can pay a flat dollar amount out to a health insurance company per membership, as opposed to, who knows what's going to happen that year. It's a much better way for them to cost control. Now, what I do not believe will happen is I do not believe whoever goes into office next year, I do not believe that they're going to take money away from Medicare like that. I don't believe whatsoever, because Medicare is funded. It's a different type of funding than, our Department of Defenses and so forth. But I think that's just all white noise and that's fear tactics. But I definitely see cost sharing going up incrementally, no different than it did the last 10 years, but bigger membership on the managed care platform.
I agree. I don't see it fading into the sunset, if you will.
No way. It's 50 million people. It's 1 in 5.
Yeah, I mean, it's just
we all paid into it.
Responsibility there. Yeah.
Yeah, what would they do if they ended Medicare? They'd have to give us all our money back from.
Yeah.
I was 15 with my first job. I'm 44, so you owe me 30 years of contributions, 1.65%, and we self-employed. We pay both sides.
Yes.
So
yeah.
You're gonna owe me a big check.
Yeah. Checks in the mail.
Retire with my Medicare money, because unlike Social Security, Medicare's tax is all the way to the end. So Bill Gates pays 1.65 to the end.
Yes.
Not capped at whatever the Social Security earnings capped are. So yeah, we'd be owed a lot of money.
Yeah.
A lot of money.
Joe, talk about Nation Care Insurance Services a little bit. And if there's anybody that's watching this, whether it be a client or whether it be an agent, how can they get in touch with you guys if they wanted to maybe, talk about your, getting a policy with you guys, or maybe they might want to work with you guys on the agent side of things, how can people get in touch with you? What states can you work with people in?
Absolutely. So I don't have the state list, but I would tell all the people that are listening, if you're in Florida, Texas, Utah, Idaho, South Carolina, Colorado, or Oregon, I'll say them again: Florida, Texas, Utah, Idaho, South Carolina, Colorado, Oregon. You're going to want to call this guy right there.
Thank
Christian.
you. Thank you, sir.
This is his show. He's doing very well. Our resident state happens to be Florida, but you want to give him a call. Any other states, you can get in touch with us one of two ways. You can call me directly. I will give you my mobile number. It's 914-489-9073. You can send a text. I use it for business purposes. Or you can send us an email. You can send it to me directly at Joseph, Joseph, at nationcareservices.com. And I will make sure that your request gets into the hands of one of our comparable and very confident agents. Ethical. We only work with ethical people. If I can't handle it myself, I will make sure that I oversee the process as I sign off on most of the stuff in our agency. And if you're an agent listening to this podcast and you want to know how to bring your career to the next level, we work very closely with agents and agencies around the country, and mainly in the Medicare space. And we basically teach them how to be better agents, how to better properly serve their clients with a big focus on understanding their medications.
Well, great. I love it. Anybody that's listening that just really, had something resonate with them that Joe said, and if you enjoyed his expertise and his insight on this interview, I encourage you to reach out to him. I encourage you to give him a call. He's someone that knows the business. He's got the experience. He's got the know-how, and he can help you. So I encourage you, reach out to this guy. He knows his stuff. Joe, thank you so much for taking the time. I know you're a busy person, and I really, really appreciate you coming on.
All right. Thank you so much. And listen, reach out to me, but reach out to this guy too. So it's not just me. You're highly respected in our space as well. I appreciate it, Christian. Thank you,
Joe. Well, everybody, thank you so much for taking the time. Thank you for watching wherever you listened to this from. Don't forget to tune into our episode coming up this coming Saturday, and I will talk with you then. Take care.
All right. Take care.